Until you do this, AI is not going to grow your business. Because of this hype, everyone now understands that AI is the new form of leverage and we're all trying to take advantage of it. And I was the exact same. I jumped on the AI train and I tried to automate absolutely everything. The problem was that everything just hurt my brain and it wasn't making any money. What I realized is that AI is just an extension of us and our output. The problem is that right now our output is limited by our personal leverage. When I removed AI completely, focused on increasing my personal leverage, then added AI back in, I was able to take my business from $0 to $10,000 a month in just 90 days. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 ways that we can maximize personal leverage so that when we add AI back into our business, it starts making us money rather than hurting our brain. Personal leverage is simply the return that we get on the time that we put into our work. The problem is that right now, a lot of us get really poor returns on our work time. So what happens is when we add AI into this system, then all that we're doing is we're optimizing and we're automating extremely inefficient workflows. When we can maximize our personal leverage, it means that we're already getting the maximum returns on our time. We can identify where we can potentially automate or outsource. So when we bring AI into this system, it is automating and optimizing an already optimized system rather than just building on top of a pile of garbage. The first way that we can maximize our personal leverage is through elimination. It actually has nothing to do with adding anything whatsoever. It's about subtracting, because as we subtract, we're only really left with the core things that generally matter. When I think about subtraction, I think about it in 3 different ways. The first big way that we can eliminate or subtract is through complexity, subtracting and removing complexity. If you have multiple offers, you have multiple funnels, you have multiple acquisition channels, then you spread yourself very thin. And what happens is you can't allocate your time to the things that are genuinely progressing the fastest. Because for example, if you have 3 different acquisition channels, there's probably one acquisition channel that gets you about 80% of your leads. But rather than focusing all of your effort and attention into growing that, you spread your attention thin between these 3 different things. And all that happens is you grow a whole lot slower because you can't allocate the time and attention to the few things that genuinely matter. A lot of us try and add complexity, especially when we have a bit of spare time on our hands, because we think I just have to do more and more different things if I want to progress and grow quickly. But what happens is if you have one thing that's currently working, one thing, for example, that's getting you the majority of your leads, and rather than doubling down on that, you go and you try and find another way of doing it, another lead acquisition channel, then all that's happening is you're taking time away from what's currently working, the high leverage thing right now, and you're putting it into a lower leverage vehicle. This means that by definition, you're getting worse returns on your work time. Simply by eliminating all this complexity and reducing your business down into the few things that actually move you forward, the personal leverage goes up significantly. But the other big thing that pairs well with this is reducing the amount of decisions you have to make, eliminating decisions. The more decisions we have to make in the moment, the lower our leverage gets. When we make decisions in the moment, we think about our emotions. We think about how I feel right now. Does this make me feel good? And the reality is, most of the high leverage actions to do don't feel particularly good. They're generally kind of challenging, kind of difficult, so you want to shy away from them. That's why we really want to avoid making decisions in the moment, because if you have to always make the decision in the moment to do the hard thing, which is the high leverage thing, then you're always working against friction, which means on a long time horizon, you're going to take this action less. So if we think about increasing our personal leverage, a big thing that we can do here is reduce the amount of decisions that we have to make in the moment so that we can just sit down and just take action rather than having to think, what should I be doing right now? Because the more times you have to ask yourself that question, the more low leverage decisions you make. The final piece in terms of elimination that we can do here is eliminating alternatives. Now, what I mean by that is eliminating potentials to change your current actions. So for example, if you currently have a way that you're acquiring leads, as soon as you change that, you drop your leverage. If you have a current business model and you change that, you drop your leverage. And the reason for that is that a lot of our leverage, the returns that we get on our time, is determined by our competency. And a lot of competency comes from just doing reps, getting volume in. If you've done a certain thing 1,000 times, then your competency is going to be very good. You become very good at that activity, which means that the return that you get on your time doing that activity the 1,001st time versus the first time is so much higher. So if we continue to change, all that happens is we build up a bit of competency, we build up a bit of leverage, and then we switch and we go all the way back to 0. And then we keep switching and going all the way back to 0. And you're just perpetually in a cycle of having extremely low leverage because you're jumping into new vehicles or new opportunities that you have zero competency at, which means you have zero leverage at. A second big way to improve our personal leverage is through improving our cognition. And when I talk about improving our cognition, I'm talking about improving the way that our brain functions in the way that it allows us to do high leverage behaviors. The first big way that we can improve our cognition is by improving our focus. If you can sit down and just focus on one individual task for a prolonged period of time, your personal leverage goes up significantly. Because if you sit down to do a task and every 3 to 5 minutes, your brain goes wandering, maybe you check your notifications on your phone, then it's very hard for you to get extremely strong returns on this work time because your brain is constantly stopping and starting and stopping and starting. But if you can go extremely deep on a work task, if you can focus for 100 minutes at a time, single task focus, the returns that you get on that time become extremely, extremely good. And this is one of the things that I was able to do. Back when I was 17 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. My focus was so horrendous and it was so bad. And a big reason for that is I was consuming so much instant gratification content, so much short form content that constantly rewarded me for changing and switching tasks, which made it extremely difficult for me to focus. Having eliminated all online entertainment for over 500 days, one of the big things that this did is it removed all instant gratification content. I actually tracked the data on this, and over the last 20 weeks, I've been able to maintain a single task focus of 100 minutes on average. This has done a lot for the returns that I get on my time, for that personal leverage, because it means I'm not stopping and starting. It means I'm not changing tasks. I can just go deep on one individual thing. Another really big way that we can improve our cognition is by improving our decision making. Improving your decision making is probably the highest leverage thing that you can possibly do. And this is a little bit different from removing decision fatigue, because when I'm thinking about decision fatigue, I'm thinking about daily actions that we know that we have to do. We just sometimes don't want to do them. But when I think about decision making, I'm thinking about the meta strategy, the big goals that we're trying to achieve. How do I get there? For example, what are the inputs required for me to get to my goals? On top of that, of these inputs, what can I eliminate? What can I remove? Making these big decisions that have sort of fork in the road impacts on your business, and being able to make better decisions here is going to be probably the highest leverage thing that you can possibly do for improving your personal leverage. This is why one of the very first things that I get people to do when they join the Modern Monk community is figure out what is your North Star. Because once you have a very, very clear and strong picture of where you're working towards, it's very easy to figure out what you have to do downstream from that. One of the biggest things that knowing what your North Star is and knowing what your goal is it becomes very clear what actions you have to take. And that's really the next big decision that you have to make is what are the actions that are going to get me to my goal the fastest? Because realistically, this decision is the next big decision that's going to count for personal leverage. How do I get the best possible returns on my work time? And this is a big decision to make. And if you don't have a very, very clear and obvious North Star, it becomes a lot harder to make these decisions and to orient your actions. The final big way that we can increase our personal leverage is through increasing our volume, especially when we've made a good decision about the small set of inputs that we have to take and we've eliminated everything else. You'll just be left with a very, very small set of actions. And the last way you can really increase his personal leverage is through volume. The first way that volume really allows you to get better personal leverage is it allows you to become better at that skill. Simply by doing an action more often, you go through more of these feedback cycles where you take an action, you see the outcome, you see what can be done to improve it, you change, and you take that action again. And the more of these feedback cycles you go through, the more that you improve and the better returns that you get on every single rep that you put in. As I mentioned earlier, your 1,001st rep is going to be so much more efficient. You're going to get so much more out of than your first rep, because your competency is just building as you go through these learning feedback cycles, which really all start with action and they all end with action. All this happens from you really having a condition, taking an action, changing your behavior the next time, and then doing the action again. And going through these cycles, you're going to become more competent and you're going to get better returns on every single minute you put in. If you have 2 sales reps, and the only difference between these 2 sales reps is that one person's been doing this for 2 weeks and one's been doing this for 20 years, you might notice that the first sales rep has a close rate of, let's say, 20%, and the second sales rep has a close rate of, let's say, 60%. This guy's getting 3 times better returns on his time than the first sales rep simply because he's done more volume. He's gone through these feedback cycles quicker, so he knows what to do. He knows how to get the best possible returns on his time, and it's simply a volume game. The more volume you can put into this feedback cycle, the more competent you get, the better returns you get on your time. On top of just making you more skilled, another big thing that volume does is it allows compounding benefits to kick in. If you do a set of actions consistently over a long period of time, these actions start stacking on top of each other and you start seeing these compounding benefits kick in. For example, if you're trying to build a business, it might take you 2 years to get to $10,000 a month. But then in the third year, you go to $100,000 a month. It's very common to see something like this happen because the compounding benefits are really starting to kick in. And simply by choosing the right inputs, by eliminating, so you're just doing the 80-20s and doing these consistently, you can really start seeing these compounding effects kick in. When it comes to volume, one thing worth noting here is that volume is a multiplier on your leverage. So you can have really good leverage, but if you're only working 1 hour a day, then your output is still very limited. Whereas if you increased your volume from 1 hour to 4, you just 4x'd your output, assuming that your leverage hasn't gone down. Now, this is the key point here, is that if you keep pushing your volume to the point where you're working 12 hours a day, even more, you're almost guaranteed for your leverage to drop down. Even if you're doing high quality tasks, because you're working such long hours, your cognitive function is reducing slightly, you're fatigued, you're tired, you're getting worse and worse returns on your time. So for me, I think a minimum to try and aim for is 4.5 hours a day. This is a sweet spot where you're getting really strong returns in your time. You don't have to sacrifice any leverage. You can keep pushing if you want after that, but you have to bear in mind that your leverage is going to go down slightly. Once you've actually run through this and you've maximized your personal leverage by eliminating the complexity, the decisions, the alternatives, you make sure that your cognitive function is really good, your focus is high, your patience is there, your decision making is good, and then your volume is at a point where you're consistently working on the right things at about 4 hours, 4.5 hours a day, very consistently. This is the point where you can look at your workflow, you can look at what you're doing and you can go, okay, of what I'm doing right now, of what is left, what can I start giving to AI? And when I think about what am I giving to AI, I'm thinking about what tasks am I doing repetitively that I don't need any real judgment for. These are great things to hand and palm off to AI, but I think the problem that a lot of us have right now is that we don't have a good, clear idea of what our workflow looks like. We have a huge amount on our plate, and rather than going, let me just take stuff off my plate, we go, okay, well, how do I automate all of these things and have a bunch of different automations going at the same time, adding a huge amount of complexity and headache. This is exactly what I did, and my brain just hurt, but nothing was happening. When I completely switched it so that I just focused on maximizing my personal leverage, and then with what I had, then I saw what could I implement AI for to get better returns on my time. This was a big unlock for me. Now, if you're a high-ticket consultant or agency owner and you want to maximize your personal leverage to grow your business faster, spending less time at the desk, then you can join the Modern Monk community for free. I'll leave a link in the description below for that. For everyone else, if you want to see the 5 forms of hidden procrastination that are destroying your online business, then you can check out this video right here. So I'll either see you in the Modern Monk community or in that video. Cheers.